Isaac, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's nice to talk with you. It's been a while. Thanks
Yes,
for
it's
having me.
thank you. Yes, it's great to reconnect. So I really want to hear your story about your entrepreneurial journey and some of the decisions you've made and the businesses you started and things like that. So sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So let's go back to formative years of Isaac Smith. Like, where's your hometown, where you grew up, things like that.
All right, way back. Yeah, so I grew up in the Portland, Oregon area. That's where I live now. But yeah, I mean, I grew up here. I love my hometown. It's a great place. And it's a nice place to grow up. And but I've moved around quite a bit. I went away for college and taught English in Korea and
Where did you
lived
go?
in Maryland.
Where did you go to school for college, and for
I went
what?
to a small university called Andrews University in Southwest Michigan.
Oh
And
wow.
everyone who hears I went to college in Michigan says, "Oh, did you go to U of M or State?" And no, 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 no. Tiny, tiny little school. And I studied architecture.
A small liberal arts college, I assume.
Yeah.
Wow, so you did have a Midwestern experience because I grew up in Minnesota nearby.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that about you.
Yep, that's a little bit about my background. So why did you choose architecture? Like, how did you come about in that?
Well, I just loved it. I think from a very early age, I was fascinated with cities and buildings. The old game SimCity really just I was fascinated by that. The idea that you could create places and build roads and things like that, which is not exactly architecture, but it got me thinking about it. And then I loved going to new cities. So I grew up in Portland, right? Not super special place for architecture, but you know, of course, there are interesting places everywhere, and Seattle is a kind of the big brother city near us, and they have some more what I thought was more interesting stuff there. So I just grew up like just looking at it and being fascinated and just wanted to be involved. So I went to Andrews, which is like you said, small liberal arts college, and they're surprisingly very well known for architecture, and specifically traditional design, in addition to urban design. And so that was like, wow, I can get a combination of both of these things that I love. So yeah, that I really was passionate about that in those early years.
All right, so you got your 4 year architecture degree, and then you're off on your first job, I assume. So what did that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a adventure between there and then, but yeah, so it was actually a 5 year architecture degree. It took me 6 years because I started with something else. Anyway, this is a longer story, but yeah, 6 years in school, and you get your master's when you do that. So I got
Oh,
my master's,
impressive.
and then yeah, then I got married and wanted to go take a break and teach English in Korea.
Ah, so that's where that
So we
happened.
did that.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, so we were there for a year. Super
Korea, I
excited
recall.
to. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that.
amazing. Recommend it highly for anybody who wants to do that.
What part of Seoul were you in? Do you remember? Like area,
Well,
neighborhood?
yeah, and we went back actually just in this year in August with our my wife and my daughter. So we were in Seoul. We were in the western part of the city. It's called Mokdong.
You know what? That sounds familiar, but I just don't, know the details. Okay, very good. All right. So from there, you went back to the States and got a job, I assume?
Yeah, yeah, I was really excited and eager to start my architecture career. And so I got a job with a really tiny firm in Maryland. And there were a lot, at the time, there were a lot of really good jobs for people who had our kind of training in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I actually had a couple of job offers with actually both of my top choices.
Wow.
So it was amazing. Yeah. The one that I chose it was just one guy, and
Oh,
we were working in the basement of his house,
okay.
and so it was just him and me. Sometimes we had another employee, kind of off and on. She was like an intern, but yeah, I was there for a couple of years. Anyway, yeah, really, really, really interesting
So you
stuff.
said this was in Washington, D.C.? Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah, in Maryland,
Okay.
Maryland, D.C. area.
All right. And then I believe you transitioned from that point. It was at the entrepreneurial bug, or did you want to do something different?
Yeah, well, I had a few jobs in architecture for a total of 8 years, and it's funny. Like each time a lot of people a job is a job, right? There's things you like about it, and there are things that you don't. And the things that I didn't were starting to eat away at me a bit, and I thought, well, that's just because I'm in this guy's basement, And his partner is also living here and sometimes working, and I don't get along with her, you know. So it's like I should get out of here. But and also that was 2008, and the financial crisis was just starting to happen, and he was like, I don't. He was gratefully he was nice enough to say, I don't know how much longer I can keep you around, so you should probably go look for something else. He was actually really really good in a lot of ways, to me, and so I went back to the other place that I had an offer from, a couple years prior, and they were hiring, so I worked there, and that was an awful, awful, awful place. It
Well, what were
turned
some
out
of
to
the
be.
things that bothered you? The people, the work, the stress?
It was just what I did not know in school was that architecture, it has a very bad work-life balance, just in general. And people are so passionate that they work themselves to death. Sort of as an exaggeration, sort of not. It depends on the firm, but it's quite common for firms to be really, really difficult.
Didn't know that.
And
Talking.
and in addition to that, they were jerks.
Ooh,
Hmm?
that's not a good combination. No, I could kind of see the sentiment in terms of the stress, and you're working on, under the time limits and things like that, and then on top of that, working with some difficult personalities. It sounds like what you had.
Yeah. So it's like like I was saying, there were things that ate at me in the first job, and then this, and it's funny that you think like each time you think, oh, just a better job will solve these problems. And it wasn't until that was 2008, 9, 10 era. So I was there a little over 2 years, and it took me a year to find a job because the job market was just so bad during that time. I would, this is probably, the statistics are probably won't bear this out, but just as a experience, like roughly a third of all the architects that I knew got laid off during those years.
Wow, had no idea.
My college roommate, who was also working as an architect, also in the same city, and happened to be in the same building as me at a different firm, he got laid off twice from two different places.
Wow.
So it's like I'm fortunate that I was able to hang on to my job. But yeah, so yeah, it took me a year to find a replacement, and that place was the most amazing place that any architect could ever want to work at. It was just wonderful.
Wow.
They were nice people. They did not have that work life. They didn't have the overloaded work. It was just really great. They did great work. Wonderful. And I was really happy for like a year or two. And then it's just like, no, there's something wrong here. You know, kind of the same old stuff, the feelings coming back, and there's just something wrong. And I don't know what it is. And it's not this place because it's wonderful. So there must be something wrong with me, is what I was thinking. And for a long time, I thought that maybe I would go start my own architecture firm. And then I saw like, oh, this is actually a really brutally difficult thing to do. And I don't think I want to do that. And then I thought, well, I really like building. So, you know, what if I were to become a developer? Or what if I went back home? And my dad was a contractor at the time.
Oh.
So what if I bought a little piece of property, designed a house, and built one and sold it, right?
Yeah.
I thought about all of these things, and then I learned, like, no, that is actually really, 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 really difficult. You got to, you know, get funding, and you know, and then if you take loans to do this, and then it doesn't sell, you know, then you're on the hook. You know, it's like, no, that doesn't sound much better.
Right.
So anyway, eventually I started listening to podcasts about entrepreneurship and
What were some of those?
learned. Yeah, well, obviously, like Pat Flynn, right? That was the one back in the day. So this was 2010,
Yeah.
11 that I started listening to this stuff. And finally, that kind of made sense because I had been listening to like Stanford University lecture series podcasts, and these are all like startups. And like, okay, you raise $10 million, right? And then you start a software company, and you work, you know, brutally hard for 8 years, and then maybe you get an exit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys have a worse life than I do. That's not any better. So eventually, when I heard Pat Flynn, it made a lot of sense. Plus, he used to be an architect, just like
Oh,
me.
cool. That's it. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. It went
Yeah.
Berkeley. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, I can really resonate with what this guy is saying. And so that kind of led me to like listen to some more different podcasts, and eventually I heard about drop shipping, and I was like, okay, because like Pat Flynn had, you know, security guard training websites and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. Like, it's a website, and like all these other niche websites that he was talking about, just like it seemed so ephemeral or amorphous. It's just like, here somebody gives you money and you ship them a product. That makes sense to my brain.
Yeah. Sure. All right. So listening to podcasts kind of was the catalyst to start your entrepreneurial thinking. Then you came across Dropship Lifestyle, which is an e-commerce course, and you build your website, your store using importers or manufacturers based in the U.S., and you sell high-ticket items. That's generally kind of what it is. And I think you went to the Hawaii retreat, right? Is that your first
Yeah, I
conference?
went to several of them. Yeah, they're great.
Okay. Yeah, because I went to the one after that in Mexico, Playa del Carmen. And then...
That was the first one I didn't go to.
Oh, okay. That's why we
Or
didn't...
no, second one I didn't go to. I went to like 3 or
Okay.
4 in a row.
And Johnny FD, I think he was in your cohort. He was my inspiration. Is I came across his content, and he talked about drop shipping, and that's what got me to thinking and moving overseas. But anyways...
Same thing. Yeah, he was the guy who was on a guy. Do you know who Terry Lynn is?
That doesn't ring a bell.
He had one of the early e-commerce podcasts called, I forget even what it was, like build my online store or something. And on one of the interviews he was interviewing Johnny, and Johnny was talking about drop shipping, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. So that's where I heard about it.
All right. So how far did you get in drop shipping? Any successes there?
Oh my gosh. I had some of everything. I had terrible failure. I spent a year, more than a year, working on a store that just didn't work out, selling remote controlled cars. I did some other things. It took quite a while till I had something that worked.
Okay.
But then when I had something that, you have something that works, you go like, okay, let's go. Let's add to this. Let's grow this. So, yeah, I ended up it took me about 4 years of working on the store that worked. It sold pedicure chairs
Right.
was the main thing. And yeah, and so I grew that, learned a lot through that process. Looking back, I would say, it was moderately successful. And but there was a lot that I didn't know there was a lot that I didn't know. And looking back, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that way better now. But yeah, but it was good. It was the first thing that actually worked, and I kind of rode that for a few years, and then eventually sold that business.
Okay. And I think that was around the same time we met. I think it was around 2019, 2020. It's around COVID.
Yep.
And I'm going to throw one out there. Do you know how we met or were put in touch together?
Was it? I guess I don't know. I mean, it was through the DSL community, I'm sure, but I don't remember that first
I
thing.
think you were at the time of COVID. You were running the team systems and teams and systems kind of
Yeah.
group, and I've got thrown in there. I don't have no idea. I don't know if someone suggested it. I don't know if you put me on the list or what, but I just remember getting a notification and then saying, "Oh yeah, this is up my alley," and joining. And then
Oh,
from
that's
that time
funny.
on, you had these, I don't say courses, but meetups, kind of mentorships, masterminds, and we'd talk. So I got to know some other people at that time. So that's how I got to know you. I was reflecting today. I was like, how did I get?
That's interesting. No,
Yeah,
I didn't have any idea where it's like that was so long ago, and I've, interesting.
yeah,
Well, should we give the listeners the context for what we're talking about, what that was?
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So, 2019, I sold the e-commerce store, and looking for something else to do. And a really big problem for me during that running that business was understanding my numbers and the cash flow and all of that stuff. And it's a much longer story, and I'll just kind of breeze over it. But I was really angry with my accountants, the whole time, and I felt like they really didn't do a good job, and they didn't help. They didn't even want to help me understand what was going on. I was going through some really tough times because you get ups and downs in business, and I
Oh
was in a
yeah.
downtime, and they just were so unhelpful. But the problem was it numbers related, and so I decided eventually to sell the store, and eventually just educated myself and learned a lot, and realized, oh my gosh, I could save so much heartache and anxiety if I just had this understanding all along, or somebody was able to help me this way. And so I decided to create a bookkeeping business for e-commerce
Ah,
companies, and I did, and that's its own journey. But so I launched that at the end of 2019, like August or September, and it was just me and a VA and a spreadsheet, and I thought that would be useful.
right.
It turned out not to work
Oh,
at all. And so then you go like, oh great, what am I going to do? So I knew a guy who had that accounting knowledge, and so I brought him on to partner with me. And so we relaunched that in January of 2020. Perfect timing for COVID.
oh,
And and so when COVID was happening, or when it was starting to happen, you probably remember there was panic,
yeah.
in the supply chain problems. And I didn't have any of the answers, but I had started a podcast. And so like I had been interviewing so many great, smart people in e-commerce. I was like, I don't know the answers, but I can see the panic in the forums. Um, so how about we do an event and just bring all these great speakers together and just help people through. And so that's what a friend and I did. And we held a 4-day virtual summit that was like 7 hours a day live broadcast, 40 speakers, thousands of attendees, just like crazy. It blew up way bigger than I ever imagined it might. And we had a ton of really goodwill that we built through that, and we didn't charge anything. It was just So that kind of like led on to some other things. And we did some masterminds. I think you might have been in the mastermind actually.
Yes.
Were you in the mastermind?
Yeah, so that rings a bell. I think I missed
Yeah.
that. I saw that online about what you're talking about, that 4-day event, and I think I missed it. And then the mastermind was after it, and I got put in touch with you in that mastermind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. However you got connected with somebody, that you know how social media is, and you must have gotten an invite somewhere.
Right.
And yeah, so we were doing masterminds. And then when that was done, I was like, oh man, how do I keep this feeling going? Because it feels really good when you're doing good things with people,
Sure.
like you get this tremendous goodwill coming to you, and you're like, people are so happy that you're helping them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I like this. And so I was like, oh well, what is this thing? What else can I do to help people? And I knew that there was one thing that I was pretty good at, which is team building and recruiting great people. And that's an area where I knew that everybody was just, in the forums, people just, you see everybody failing. They're like, oh, how do I do this? I hired the wrong person. So that's when I put that course with the group coaching component together as kind of just a free thing at first.
I see. So that's where that came in. And then I think from there you spent some time building up e-commerce advisors or Summit e-commerce.
Summit e-commerce advisors. Yeah, that's the bookkeeping business that we relaunched in January of 2020.
Okay. And then you ran that for a while. And then I learned that you were part of Dynamite Circle, Tropical MBA. Maybe you can go a little bit into what that is and how you got involved.
Well, Tropical MBA is a great podcast for listeners. If you want to listen to another podcast about business, it's a good one. And I've been a listener for many years. But they also have a community, a paid community that is. So I joined that in 2017, maybe. Yeah, it's just it's a great community. They have great events, masterminds, online, local. Just a great community to be a part of.
What was your first conference, the Bangkok or the one on North American side?
The first one I went to was in 2021 in Mexico. Is that the one that you went to?
No, my first one I just joined in 2019. I was hanging out in Saigon, and then I think I Googled online business groups or whatever, and then that popped up, and they were having their conference in Bangkok in a month, and I think it was all closed. And then I emailed the community organizer at the time, and she got me in. She said, yeah, if you can make it, we got a ticket for you or something like that. And then I attended 2019. And then I was stuck in Vietnam for a little while for COVID. And then I think I met up with you in 2023.
That was the first time we'd met in person. I remember
Yes.
seeing you in Mexico. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. So how many have you done? Maybe a few of those now in person?
Yeah. In 21, that was the first one, because I was going to go to the one in 2020, but it was canceled. And so after that, I started doing the, every 6 months. So one, in October is Bangkok, in May it's Mexico, and I've been doing that ever since. Except this year, I skipped the Mexico one, and I've regretted it.
Oh, really?
So it's like never again. I'm always gonna go. So
Okay.
twice a year, I'll go to these. Once in Bangkok, once in Mexico.
Okay, so before we get into what you're working on now, Isaac, do you want to fill in the gap of what we discussed from
Sure.
COVID or anything like that? Did anything else
Yeah.
happen?
Well, I mean, I'm really happy with where I am now, but I would not recommend it. It's been a painful journey.
Oh, okay.
Like going from, so some people will listen to me, like they'll hear my story and they'll be like, "Oh, wow, you've done so many different things. That's so cool." And it's like, "Oh, but you have no idea."
Right.
It's learning something new every time. It'd probably be wise if you just got really good in one industry, but I just didn't do that. But I'm happy with where I am now. So what happened, how I got here and what I'm doing now is, so you might, right? You heard me talking about all this stuff that I was doing while supposedly I was building a bookkeeping business, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're thinking like, what are you doing, man? You should be focused on your business. And yeah, being public and kind of like, kind of known in the e-commerce world did bring more clients to the bookkeeping business. And but I was really drawn to the team stuff, and that is what I was good at. With the bookkeeping business, we, over time built up a big, a pretty decent team, decent sized team. It was a great team, and it was like 10 to 13 people depending on the month, or who, if you're counting a couple part-timers or whatever. But that was kind of my realm, and had really great success with that part of it. And it's funny, I was just drawn to helping people in that realm, helping the e-commerce people, hire great people. But the problem was, you guys, what's wrong with you people? You don't do what I say. And then you come to these group calls and you present all your problems and you're like, yeah, I just don't know why this isn't working out with this person I hired. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, did you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4? And they're like, no, I didn't do any of that. Like, what?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk you through this because I love talking about business and like solving problems, but you should have just followed the process, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, after 6 or 8 months of that, I just like, I don't want to be a course creator or a coach. That's just miserable. I mean, I enjoy the coaching part of it, but you got to take some accountability for your actions, guys.
Right.
Good
point.
So eventually I decided I'm just going to shut this down. I'll do something else. And I thought, well, they still do need help. So here's the deal. Like, if you want help, just pay me and I'll do it for you. It's the recruiting service. So that's what that turned into. And yeah, a fair number of them took me up on that, and that grew into something a little bit more. And that's when I don't remember how, but we learned that accountants need help, not just e-commerce people. Because my partner Jason, he is a profit first professional, and he's in that community, and they're all talking about the accountant's main problem is, oh, we can't find enough people to do the work, right? We're overwhelmed. And so we started engaging in that community, and then eventually, offering the same service. And we learned like, oh, wow, this group of people cares a lot more about what we have to offer than the e-commerce group does. You know, like e-commerce people don't really care about their teams. That sounds mean to say, but it's just true. They care about product and marketing. That's all they care about. But they'll tell you, no, they care about their team. They really don't. I mean, they're a necessary evil.
I see.
I'm being a little bit facetious and a little mean to e-commerce people, but I mean, rightly so. Their business is product
I see.
and selling that product. Accountants, their business is the people doing the work. So they care a lot more, and they're willing to pay a lot more as well.
Okay.
So we learned that, and so that was really an interesting and exciting twist. So over time, we did more and more of that, and I decided I learned a lot. Actually, at the 2022 DC Bangkok event, I was at a point in my life where I was like, I'm doing too many things. We started a marketing service inside that bookkeeping business. What are we doing? A content marketing service. And it's like the message that I received from that event was focus. It seemed to me, and I've talked with other people later, and they said, no, I didn't get that at all from the event. It seemed to me that every speaker, the main topic was focus.
Nice.
Because that's what I needed to hear, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned, like, okay, I got to do something. I got to do something different. What I'm doing now is not working. I mean, it's okay. It's working very well in some respects, but it's not getting me where I want to be in life. And there's this, so like we had bookkeeping, we had a marketing service. That was ridiculous. And then we had this recruiting service. And in just that first year that hadn't even completed by October, it was already doing better than the bookkeeping business was.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, that tells you something, right? Like, and it only had one person. We only had one person doing the work. With the bookkeeping business, we had 10 people doing the work. You know, I don't think the revenue numbers were higher, but the profit numbers were higher. And I'm lit up on the inside about teams and people. I'm not lit up on the inside about e-commerce bookkeeping, you know?
Right.
So, yeah. So eventually I decided I needed to do something different, and I needed to break off and do focus on this.
All
And
right.
that's what I've done.
What is this and what is it all about?
So I started around that time. Interestingly enough, Merrill Johnston, who is the founder of a company called Bean Ninjas, which is a kind of a DC darling, early breakout success business. It's a bookkeeping business. I always looked up to her, and kind of followed along with Bean Ninjas over the years. Interestingly enough, she just kind of randomly reached out to me one day and said, "Hey, Isaac, I'd never talked to her before.
Wow.
I think we'd commented on some of the same things, but like never like a conversation." And she reached out and said, "Hey, I hear you're doing some recruiting in the Philippines for accountants. Can you tell me about that? I'm interested." So we had a few conversations, and she was very intrigued. And actually, I didn't even know before, but she had a really big problem with her team, and had always hoped that there would be a better solution. It's a longer story, so I don't think it's worth getting into the details. But basically, she for years had been thinking, man, there's got to be a better solution. And turned out that what she had been thinking about was exactly what I was going to go build.
Oh.
And I hadn't even started it yet. Or we were doing the work informally through the bookkeeping business. But So, yeah, she has a lot more connections in the accounting world, and then I didn't have any connections in the accounting world. The only connection I had was through my partner, through Profit First, and I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to do something my own way, right? So not with him and not dependent on his connections. And and here comes this other person with a lot more connections. And anyway, so together, yeah, we've started my new company, which is Teamup, and we recruit amazing, talented people in the Philippines to work with accounting firms and other companies that need to hire accountants, but primarily accounting firms like CPA firms, that kind of.
Wow, what a concept. That's amazing.
I know, it's so niche, isn't it?
It is. But it seems like you're the only one doing this. You know, you heard of,
It
you have to be.
yeah,
I mean, you heard of like outsourcing the Philippines, but that's very
right.
general, or VAs, but again, that's just general things, whereas you're very targeted.
Crazy thing is, yeah, you're right. And we are the only ones doing this. I've
Yeah.
searched the internet. There aren't any others. There are many others who do accounting or they do outsourcing for accountants, but they use that staffing model where basically they double or triple the price, double or triple the salary, and that's what the company pays, and then that staff is like part of the other company. Whereas I just don't think that's a good option for anybody. It just is a terrible model. But somehow they've gotten away with it for all these years. And here I am coming in disrupting this thing. And everybody's happier. The staff is happier because they get to work directly with their client, who's not their client anymore, who's their boss now, right?
Right.
And they get paid more and they get treated better.
Right.
And same exact same thing on the other side for the company side. Their costs are less, but they get somebody better, more talented, and they have that direct relationship. They can do their own training, build their own culture, and be in control of retaining somebody for the long term. It's like everybody wins. It's crazy, and I cannot believe that I'm the only one doing this.
Yeah.
Now that I say it, I'm sure I'm going to invite a lot of competitors.
Well, I
right?
don't know about that, but they're pretty niche, and I don't know. Do you want to share a little bit about the insides of your workings? Like, I know it's probably a remote first business. Do you have staff in the States, and is it mostly in the Philippines, or I don't know?
Yeah, sure. So right now, at the end of 2024, it's now been a year and a half since I started this, and oh my gosh, I mean I don't like to be the brash, I'm so great kind of comment, but like it's working way better than anything else I've ever done.
That's
It's
great.
crazy. I'm like, pinch me. I can't believe this is happening, sort of thing here.
Super.
No, I mean, and it's only been in the last since March that has been true. But leading up to that, all the signs, starting a new business is
Yeah.
you start at zero, and you're just looking for the indicators. You don't have results yet. It's just indicators, and you're like, oh, these are all very, very, very positive, and it just takes time for those indicators to turn into results. And so, about what is that now? 8 months ago, they started turning into results. So it's just been a thrill. It's been a wild ride the last year and a half. And so right now the team is there's Meryl, who's in Australia. There's me. She's our brand ambassador, is what we call her. And so she's our connection to the accounting industry. And now that it's been a while, I have more connections as well. But she's an advisor, and like she takes that role, and she's very good at marketing, right? I mean, what she's done with Bean Ninjas has been amazing. She loves marketing, so she's like kind of heads that part. But she's only part time, right? She's still she's still an owner of Bean Ninjas. She's active in other things, and then me full time. And then in the Philippines, we have our recruiting team. So in August we hired 2 more recruiters. So now we're up to 4.
Wow.
We elevated the 2. So I first hired one. Oh my gosh, there's so many stories. Like, you start something and it just doesn't work. It's disaster. Well, that happened again with this business. So I didn't know what to do. It's one thing to do this kind of informally through a different business for, hand-picked clients. And then you open it up to the public and they have different people with different things they're looking for. And it's like, and more of them. And so it all just starts breaking down. And so crap, you go, what do I do? So I went out and I found a real professional. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned with this business is stop. If I'm, they always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you got to move into a different room.
Yeah.
But like as a business owner, is that still true? I learned that in this business, yes. So hire people who know if I'm the one who has to know things and solve problems, there's something wrong. So, so I hired a professional recruiter who was been doing this for many years, who came in and built the systems.
Nice.
And so like if there's ever a challenge with a client or a project or something, I cannot be involved. Like they can't pull me in because I'll be like, well, I don't know. Did you talk to her?
Right.
So anyway, so she helped build the operations. She not helped. She did. She built the operations. Her name is Lala. Hi Lala, if you ever listen to this. She's incredible.
Amazing.
And then we brought in one of her coworkers. We poached her away, and she started this year in March, full time, part time a few months before. And then when we hired 2 more, like I'm not going to be the manager. Obviously, like I said, I don't even know how to do the work.
Yeah.
How could I manage people doing that? So we needed to elevate somebody to team lead, and so we elevated Janelle. Hi, Janelle. She's the second one who came, and then freed up Lala to be our client success manager, to do a lot of follow up and make sure people are being really successful. And then so now the two new recruiters are reporting to Janelle.
Wow. What a solid team it sounds like, and business.
And after this interview, I have an interview with someone we're hiring for a marketing assistant role now. So yeah, it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, this is so cool. Yeah, I got wind of what you were doing because I think on Facebook you posted your company website and it looked really professional. And then I started to understand the concept. I'm like, oh my gosh, Isaac's sitting on a gold mine. This is like, I've never heard of this, but there's such a need. And he's putting together on what he does well. And then, with the problem of, finding the lack of competent accountants or actually assistants or help at least, and filling that need with matching that up in the Philippines. So I saw that. I was like, God, this is really neat. I really gotta watch this one.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a long ride, a long journey.
No, I no, because I knew you beforehand and what you were doing, with drop shipping and then your podcast and then e-commerce summit advisors, and then with this new kind of ordeal, I wanted to touch base and hear all about it. So really appreciate it.
It's amazing. You look back and you think like, gosh, that was just a lot of ups and downs and a slog and, like so many different things. But if I look back, I can see one common through line, and it's always been the people. I'm really terrible at most things, I think. Or, I guess maybe to be fair, false humility isn't always a good thing. But I'm not great at most things. But the one thing that I can say that looking back, I've been really, really good at is finding great people and setting them up for success and building the vision about what it is that they're coming to join and getting them really hyped about that. And it's just a thrill to for maybe like if you want to try and draw lessons from my experience, fortunately I was in a position where I was able to follow my interest, and my wife has a good job and she's been really supportive this whole time, not emotionally but also financially, right? I had the freedom to fail, and even though I didn't want to fail and not make much money for years, that's what happened. And I was able to follow my interest and my skills and find a market that needed them. And so I feel really, really lucky that all of those things lined up, and I was able to follow that path.
That's fabulous. All right, we have like a minute left. Isaac, can you share with us maybe some advice for those that are starting their journey, or anything you've learned and that you'd like to pass along?
Don't do it. No, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, to be totally transparent, the older I get, the less I think I know. Like, I know, true. Like, who am I to give anybody any advice? And the people who do, I think you probably shouldn't take their advice. I've become really cynical about the online business discussion, the narrative. I don't think anybody has the answers. Everything works, nothing works. All of that is true,
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you got to just do what's right, and you're going to fumble around and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But then eventually it might work if you keep going and pivoting and pivoting. Looking for a market, right? A product market fit is something that is so hard to find. And once you do, it kind of feels like you're lucky. And by the way, I'm not like some success story, right? I'm just still in the very early stages of this. Sure. I hope to grow this thing much, much, much bigger. I think I can, but I'm not there yet.
All right. So before we take off, Isaac, how do people reach out to you and find you?
Feel free. I think LinkedIn is the social media of choice these days, at least for me. You can search my name, Isaac Smith. I think my handle is the Isaac Smith. That might be right.
Okay.
But if you search Isaac Smith Teamup, you'll find me. Or come to the website and reach out through there.
All right.
Happy to chat.
Sounds good. Isaac, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been super fun, Vin. Really, I appreciate this. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet.